Back at home, feeling misunderstood. In between these ears, ain't nothing
Alright,
good.
let's talk some draft. We'll go AFC on this side of the break, and when we come back, we'll talk about the NFC. And we'll start in the AFC North. We're going to recap by division, and we'll talk about teams if they're needed. And we're starting with the AFC North because obviously you can see it here. I'm wearing my Bengals pullover. I gave the Bengals, Ravens, and Steelers and Browns. They're all above 50-50 in what they did in the draft. And let's start with the Bengals. I gave them a C+ in the full blog that we had. We had 4 contributing writers. We split 2 divisions apiece. So go check that out, unhingedsn.com. I gave them a C+. I really like the Jamar Chase pick. I basically came out on the table and said, I will not be a Bengals fan if you don't take Jamar Chase or Penei Sewell.
And ladies and gentlemen, he said that a month ago about Penei Sewell, 2 months ago. But hey, here we are.
Things change. I'm allowed to change my mind, obviously. That was a really good pick. They picked a kicker in the 5th round, which some would say...
Dude, the kicker is good, though.
He's badass. I'm
that
not gonna
kick
lie.
that hit the water ball, that was pretty badass.
He also hit a 55-yarder in college, and he hit that consistently. He was... I didn't watch a ton of Florida games, and Florida doesn't really have to kick field goals all that often when they do play. That wasn't a bad pick.
Kickers aren't bad to draft.
No,
if they're worth it, they're not bad to draft. The one thing I don't get is the long snappers being drafted. I mean, that's a whole different story. Kickers and punters, I understand. Long snappers don't make sense at all, but
they could be weapons if you use them correctly. And long snappers getting drafted is a little bit weird. That video of Matt Rule calling the long snapper that he drafted is going viral, and even he was like, "You drafted me? What? No." But my main problem with the Bengals draft is what they did in the 2nd round. We were talking about it before we started recording. They were sitting there after the 1st round. Tevin Jenkins, who is the nastiest offensive lineman. Maybe you can make the debate of Quinn Miners, who we'll talk about with the Broncos. Those are the 2 nastiest offensive linemen in this draft. And he was sitting right there. Didn't get drafted in the 1st round like I thought he could have. He could have been a late 1st rounder. And they trade back out of the 5th pick of the 2nd round with Chicago. And Chicago took them with that pick. So we don't get Tevin Jenkins. We end up getting Carmen, who was the left tackle at Clemson. Not like he's that much of a worse player, and I think he'll probably be better in the pass game. Tevin Jenkins is just more of a run-blocking mauler.
Well, the guy who got Carmen is Cincinnati born, too.
Yeah, I think that might have had something to go into it as well. It'll be interesting to see how it shapes out. The draft is one of those things where it can all look great, and you can get an A+ in your draft, but then none of your picks end up playing for more than 3 years. And it's a bust. We're seeing that, with Cincinnati now. Their 1st round pick from 2 years or 4 years ago, Billy Price, they didn't pick up his 5th year old.
Isaiah Wilson last year, 1st round, he's not even in the league anymore. He's making rap albums.
He had a lot of other things go. That was one of the biggest swings and misses I can remember because I thought he was going to be good. And he was going to the Titans, who they were coming off a conference championship appearance. The Ravens, I think they started, they didn't do as good of things as they could have. I think that they probably dropped the ball on some of their picks. They got Rashad Bateman and Odafe Owe, who is another outside linebacker out of Penn State. Instead of, they had Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah still sitting there. He ended up going to the Browns in the 2nd round, which I think could be a steal.
I think the Browns.
I did the AFC North.
Yeah, you did the Browns a little bit dirty, a little bit. I think the Browns did a really good job.
No, they didn't get worse, and this is different than what I'm used to talking about with the Browns. Is that they actually drafted really well. I think their best picks are Owusu-Koramoah and Togiai out of Ohio State. Mm-hmm. They lost Larry Ogunjobi to free agency this past year. He signed with the Bengals. Togiai is going to be a whole different presence in the middle of that defensive line. And I think that the Browns, they were a better team than the rest of the teams in the division, I think. So that's why I gave them a B+. So my grades for this division were Ravens B-, Bengals C+, Browns B+, Steelers A-. I will give a rare shout out to the Steelers because the center that they drafted in the 3rd round, Kendrick Perkins, I actually played with.
Kendrick Perkins, not the idiot center.
Oh, Kendrick Green.
There you go. I was like,
excuse me.
James watched a little too much basketball, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, you went at Kendrick Perkins and he actually responded to somebody, so I got confused. But Kendrick Green, center out of Illinois, I actually played with him in China when we played in the International Bowl. So it was cool to see him get drafted. I wish that it wasn't to Pittsburgh because now I can't root for him. But they will still be a solid team. I don't think that they're going to win the division anymore, but they're definitely still in the conversation for wild card.
I'll be honest, I wasn't sold on the Najee Harris pick.
Really?
I really wasn't. I thought Etienne may have had a slight edge. I think Najee Harris is a more physical back, and that's the Pittsburgh way. I think Etienne's more flashy and more downhill. But I think, at 24, you're asking a lot for him because he is going to be your premier back now. And if he doesn't come in and produce right away, I think we have James Conner 2.0, where he kind of falls off a little bit and he goes to second mark. The Steelers, if they're going to be successful, Big Ben cannot throw the ball 50 times a game. You're going to have to rely on your running game heavily. And I don't know if Najee Harris is ready for that yet. Because, look, he wasn't a running back in college that had the ball every time. Because Alabama has their RBU for a reason.
5 wide receivers in the last 2 years who've gone in the first round.
Yeah, they have the wide receiver U and RBU. They breed running backs and receivers over there. And, man, if Najee Harris, he's gonna be the premier back. And I don't know if he's ready for that.
The one thing I will say, he does have a little bit of that Le'Veon Bell, very patient style, which we saw do really well in Pittsburgh. So if they can get him to that point, I don't know if he'll have a great season this year, but his second year could be something a little bit more. But those are the grades for the AFC North. Now let's move on to the AFC East. And I did not do these grades. We gave the AFC East to Dan, the host of the Time to BS. And he gave the grades Patriots B-, Dolphins A, Bills B+, and he gave the Jets an A, which, you know.
You know what? I'm going to be honest. I'm okay with the Jets and Dolphins A's. Look, the Jets, first 3 picks, Jets hit them out of the park. Those Elijah Moore, I think, is going to be a steal. I think that's a wide receiver that's going to be talked about. That how do you fall that far?
Yeah.
I think Elijah Vera Tucker. People can say you shouldn't draft a guard that high, but look what happened to Quentin Nelson. I mean, you got your quarterback of the future. And the first, and I saw something funny. It was like after they drafted Zach Wilson, they did more for Zach Wilson than in the rest next 3 days that they did for Sam Darnold in 2 years.
That's true.
Like, they got him help.
Yeah.
They said, fuck this. I don't care. We're going to swing and miss. If they suck, they suck. But we're going to do our best to make sure he gets help.
On paper, they did everything that they needed. And Vera Tucker, I think you can make the argument he should have been drafted 14 because of the versatility that he's going to bring. But, I mean, Michael Carter, the other stud running back out of North Carolina.
Michael Carter and Michael Carter, both Michael Carters. Jets drafted Michael Carter the second, too.
Michael Carter, the running back out of North Carolina, that's going to be a good thing for them because they're not going to have to rely on Frank Gore.
Who would have thought? Frank Gore, 40 years later.
Yeah, they shouldn't have done that last year, but they
probably
did.
They probably should have drafted. I mean, look, Elijah Moore is a great wide receiver, but they probably could have picked Javonte Williams there at their first pick in the second round.
Yeah, it depends on if you wanted. You can either take the load off of Wilson's back by getting the running back or get the receiver.
Help on that side, yeah.
So I think. Honestly, Zach Wilson looks so out of place at the draft. All those pictures of him standing next to...
So weird.
The best one was the video. They were taking a picture of all the guys at the draft, and he was standing next to Jamar Chase. And Jamar Chase isn't super hood, but Zach Wilson's from Draper, Utah, and went to school in Provo. So he's like, oh, we're throwing up game
He is
sets.
as Mormon as you can get. No offense, but he is as Mormon as you can get.
Yeah, Jamar Chase gave a peace sign or the rock on after the picture, and he's like, what, we're throwing gang signs? What set do you rep, brother?
There was a majority of SEC players in that attended the draft, and the most out of place people.
A couple other teams basically did their draft too, but yeah, the AFC South. I don't know who's going to come out of that division. Probably the Colts or Titans, but that's not a division that we're going to see a lot of. It's not like the AFC North where you're going to have a division winner and 2 teams vying for a wild card spot. This is the division. It could very well be the AFC East of last year, where the team that wins the division is at or around 500, and that's about where I see the AFC.
I do got a question because I saw this question pop up for you. Is right now, who do you think is set up for more success? Put your bias aside. Joe Burrow or Trevor Lawrence? Because I'll tell you what mine. I think Joe Burrow set up for more success because of what the Bengals have done so far. I think Jacksonville is a shithole. No offense, Jim, but they are not an organization you want to go to. That is death row. That is a place you don't want to go to. The Bengals. I mean, no offense, you haven't had much success, but it's still viable. Like it's still reasonable.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think Trevor Lawrence is a better quarterback, but I think Joe Burrow is going to have more success because of the place he's at.
Now you're making me realize how close those two organizations are, because the Jaguars struggle. Their owner doesn't really know football that much. They're having a new coach. I don't know how Urban Meyer is going to do at the NFL level. I don't think Zach Taylor's a good NFL coach. I would have probably moved on from him after last year. And Mike Brown is, I think he's the worst owner, mainly because I'm a Bengals fan, but he really hasn't, objectively looking at the stuff that he's done for the team. I've said this story a couple times. TJ Houshmandzadeh, he said when he first went to the Bengals, they were reusing jock straps. They weren't issuing brand new gear for all their guys, and you had to go stop at the gas station and grab a Gatorade before practice because we're not paying team expense so that you can have Gatorade on the sidelines. I think Burrow, who knows what their careers are going to turn out, but right now Burrow definitely has a better team situation. But I think both teams are probably going to be looking for new coaches soon. I don't have faith in Urban Meyer being a good coach at the NFL level. So I guess I'll say Burrow, and that's knowing how bad the Bengals... I still don't think the Bengals are fighting for a playoff spot after this draft.
I think they're fighting for a playoff spot more than the Jaguars are.
Oh, yeah.
Because Trevor Lawrence is,
I still see Jacksonville finishing third or fourth in that division.
Yeah, the only reason why they're third is because the Texans are in that division.
That's the only reason. Let's move on to the AFC West real quick, well, not real quick. Let's talk about the Broncos. First, let's start off with that bomb that was dropped on draft day. Aaron Rodgers does not want to go back to Green Bay.
Oh, man.
And we all know that Green Bay doesn't like to trade their players within conference, so that means that the two teams that are really on the table for this Aaron Rodgers sweepstakes, if it is for real, because it could just be a play for... Who would you rather keep, Aaron Rodgers or the GM?
Oh, Aaron Rodgers.
So there is a good chance that the organization does just give Aaron Rodgers what he wants so that he stays in Green Bay and stays happy. But the two teams that are kind of in the running are the Broncos and the Raiders. And I would say the Broncos definitely a lot more than the Raiders. But what did you think when that news broke?
Man, I texted you. I was like, man, the second it's called, the second it happens, we're having a bonus episode.
You said that you were going to call in from your parents' anniversary dinner.
Yeah, I'll call in from anniversary dinner. I'll do the whole thing. If it polls, I'm going the whole way. Like, man, there's a chance. I'm going to tell you right now, there's a chance. There's a better chance than Deshaun Watson, I think, was originally before. Because Deshaun, like a few months ago when Deshaun Watson thing was going on, people didn't know what was going on with the allegations, and they didn't know if Deshaun Watson was going to leave because they were unwilling to. The Packers have done nothing for this man. Mm-hmm. And people who are saying, well, they got Devontae Adams, they got Robert Tonyan. Those guys were made good because of number 12.
Yeah.
The only reason why they're anything, they haven't drafted a wide receiver since 2002. That was when Brett Favre was still the quarterback, ladies and gentlemen. Like, they haven't done anything to help him out. If I saw a rumor that the tipping point was when they cut a receiver that I can't even remember his name. No offense to the poor guy, but they cut a receiver that Aaron Rodgers praised the day before, and then the next day after they cut him. That was the turning point. If that's the turning point about cutting a receiver that barely makes the roster, then you are in deep trouble.
You got to think that, I mean, the stat is insane. They've drafted one offensive player in the first round in the last 9 years, and that was Jordan Love last year. A guy that people were saying he got elevated to a late first-round status, but really he's probably a third-round pick at best with what he's done, being out of Utah State, and he's really raw and everything like that. So I think it's understandable for Aaron Rodgers to want out of that situation, and I think that it's either going to be the GM gets fired or Rodgers plays somewhere else.
And if you're any Packers owner out there, you make sure the GM is not the one GM is not the one that stays.
Yeah. Well, that's the other. I mean, Broncos are in a similar situation without a true owner. Organizations without a real owner
struggle.
Very struggle. And you don't really get a lot of help from the NFL because the NFL doesn't want to deal with. They want to deal with the owners. Roger Goodell is an employee of the NFL owners. That's what a lot of people don't understand when they're looking at the NFL. And when you don't have a guy that has a direct line to Roger Goodell, it's very difficult for you to make your players happy, for you to get in different things. Devontae Adams sent out a tweet today that said, you got to respect what you got before it's gone. So, I mean...
Hey, look, because I listen to the Pat McAfee show a lot, and he has Aaron Rodgers on basically every week.
Yeah.
Probably won't have it on for a few weeks because of space, and he probably doesn't want to go out on the air. But he has AJ Hawk on the show, who's a good friend of Aaron Rodgers, who was at the Kentucky Derby with him, and AJ Hawk said, yeah, he's not happy, and it doesn't necessarily go back to the Jordan Love thing. It's the fact that they have never really given him the reins to the offense or to any personnel decisions free agency. Because it's not only that this team has not drafted anybody. They let Jordy Nelson walk. They let Randall Cobb walk. They let
Aaron Jones just walked this past season.
Aaron Jones walked. Like, they're letting players walk that were pivotal parts of teams. Clay Matthews, there's another one that was a leader on a Super Bowl winning team that Aaron Rodgers was not happy about. This is not necessarily him. The Packers not drafting anybody. It's the personnel issues that they're not even discussing with 12. And look, you can have that argument. Well, quarterbacks don't determine the future. Blah blah blah. If you have a once in a generational type quarterback like number 12 Aaron Rodgers is, who may go down as a top 10 quarterback of all time, you talk with him. Tom Brady has reins. Peyton Manning has reins. Had reins. Drew Brees had reins because of the way they are. If you don't treat a quarterback because of how talented they are, you don't treat them like they are, then they're going to walk.
Yeah.
And the Packers have not done that.
You also don't actively spite your starting quarterback, and that's what they've done. When they cut the guy right after he talked about, you're spiting him intentionally. I don't think that they've been in the market for a lot of these big name receivers in free agency.
And that is crazy. You wouldn't want to play with Aaron Rodgers.
I think that the team, like the players are like, when's Green Bay calling? And Green Bay's like, no, we're
good,
fine.
Yeah.
Well, Aaron will make everybody else better. We'll give him a high school team. Aaron can get us to a 10-7 record now with a high school team. Not really. It's not how things work. Let's get to the Broncos draft specifically real quick, and we'll go through the Rev gave these grades. So let's see if you agree with Rev, former guest of the podcast. Chargers got an A+, Broncos got a B-, Chiefs got a B, and the Raiders got a C. But for the Broncos specifically, I'll tell you, I really like the Patrick Surtain pick.
I love it.
And that's going to be, he's one of those guys that gets drafted. He has Hall of Fame potential. That is you can never go wrong with that draft. I know everybody was crying because the Broncos you guys are quarterback hungry. Like every single quarterback that's rumored to be going somewhere, Broncos fan base is like, yes, please, come on. We just signed Teddy Bridgewater. I don't care. I just want another quarterback. Give me something new to look at. Patrick Surtain is going to make the Broncos defense good. This is what we were saying. All of the free agent signings that they did in the DB room made them good for next season. Patrick Surtain draft makes them good in the secondary for the next 4, 5, 10 plus years.
Your defense is set for the next 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Bradley Chubb, Justin Simmons, Patrick Surtain. Look, Patrick, we have 4 corners that are all can start on any team in the league. Surtain, Fuller, Callahan, and Darby. Mm-hmm. And people forget, Bryce Callahan, last year of his deal. Kyle Fuller, 1-year deal. Next year, Surtain is going to be the starter. You draft a starting corner who arguably I think was the number 1 corner in this draft because of the talent he faced at Alabama. You get him at number 9, that's a steal. And I'm going to tell you right now, Justin Fields doesn't make this a playoff team. He doesn't.
He's probably not playing until week 8, possibly.
Yeah, he's not the starting quarterback. He doesn't step in. Bears fans have bad news. He's probably not your starting quarterback right away either because they'll probably start Andy Dalton for 2 games and then realize how much he sucks and then let Justin Fields go. But Justin Fields is not going to be the starting quarterback for the Broncos if they drafted him at 9. Mm-hmm. Fact of the matter is, you can say, well, you got to start him, he drafted him at 9. Surtain is going to be a guy that you can anchor your defense around. And if this division tells you anything, you have to have a good secondary. You have to. Because if you can't guard anybody on the outside, you're going to get torched by Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes. Those 2 dudes, if you don't have corners that make it life a living hell on those 2 and have edge rushers like the Broncos do, your life is going to be hell. And Surtain is a great pick. If it wasn't for the signings of Kyle Fuller and Ronald Darby this offseason, every Broncos fan would be like, damn, we got Surtain? He fell to 9? That was a conversation 2 months ago. Seriously, it was. Before free agency happened, all Broncos fans were like, Surtain's the guy. And now they picked him, everyone's pissed? F off, man. F off. Hell no. That is a great pick. Surtain is going to be a Pro Bowl type corner for a lot of years. And like I said, Bradley Chubb is a Pro Bowler last year. He is going to be the next big guy for this team. And once Von Miller evidently either retires or leaves, this defense is a no-fly zone 2.0 and a great edge rusher.
And the thing about Surtain, that guys that study the game, when you watch a college cornerback play, college defenses are very zone-based because it's a lot easier. You don't have to implement a new scheme every week. Surtain can come up and press a guy and keep him at the line of scrimmage. And that's not something that you see in a guy that's that young. Usually it takes a corner 3 or 4 years in the NFL to learn that. Surtain's coming in with that ability.
Yeah,
that's going to be an extra level. You're not going to have to worry about the defense.
And he won't have to come in and face the team's number one because you have Kyle Fuller and Darby and Callahan to do that. There's not going to be no pressure. He's going to come in and he's going to learn from Pro Bowl type players, all pro type players, and then that's even going to elevate him more. I love the pick, Surtain. I love it.
He could end up starting to play safety before they move him out to corner. I can see him being the guy that they put over a Kelsey or a Darren Waller in the slot. And we've been talking about it. You either got to be able to shut down the outside of the field or the inside of the field when you're playing in teams like the Chiefs and the Chargers and the Raiders, especially in your division. You got a guy that can do that now. Patrick Surtain can come in and shut down the middle of the field just fine. And now you only have to worry about Patrick Mahomes laying out, throwing a 30-yard dime with both of his feet off of the ground. And if he beats you doing that, you're fine with it. He's no longer just going to be able to beat you because all of his receivers are running past you.
This Broncos draft is exactly what the Broncos needed to do to address to win the division. Look, we're probably not winning the division because Patrick Mahomes, but you got a running back to slow the game down and play at your pace. You got a guard/center that is an absolute animal that can dominate the inside presence, and to slow the Chiefs down, the best defense is a good offense that keeps Patrick Mahomes off the field. You got a corner that will be shut down corner for many years to come. You got a safety in Jamar Johnson out of Indiana, who is one of the best safeties that people aren't talking about.
Indiana's secondary was
dangerous,
good.
and he could be the replacement for Kareem Jackson next year, or were Zach Wilson and Mac Jones, because Mac Jones
looks like he's gonna sell me a car. He
Yeah.
doesn't look like he's gonna.
His suit was a little too big compared to everyone else's. He had the casual. I mean, no offense, but like he had the pants that fit perfectly all the way down to the ankle, all the way down to the foot. The rest of these draft picks had shoes with no socks on and basically cropped a little bit up on their pants, and their suits were nicely tight fit. I mean, talking about tight fit suits, how about that Myles Garrett suit? That was also something. I mean, that was pushing a little bit. But yeah, those two looked way out of place. I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, and Mac Jones looks like he's been celebrating that national championship a little bit. He's got that beer gut rocking.
I mean, that's the Patriot way. You're not a good Patriot quarterback unless you got a gut, right?
I guess. We definitely know Bill Belichick has a type. Bill Belichick likes his quarterbacks a little bit on the thicker side. And that's where we'll leave that. But the AFC East, the one thing that really surprised me, the Bills, they didn't have a terrible draft, but they didn't have as good of a draft as they probably could have.
I think they could have swung on some different players. I think they should have been a little more aggressive.
Yeah, they went really safe for most of it.
They went really, really safe. They should have been a little more aggressive on some things. They had no picks that were like, oh my gosh, this guy is the next stud. They had picks where like, this guy could be a fringe starter, or this guy is going to make a difference, but he's not going to make a huge impact. The Bills are, right now, I'm telling you right now, if you're a contender in the NFL and you are a top 4 team in the NFL, I'll say it right now, you take swings and misses. You're like, you know what, this guy has potential. He may have injury history or may have something else. You take swings and misses because you have the capabilities of that. Because if it turns out well, then you are sitting pretty. But if it doesn't, you're okay because your team is still solid. The Bills didn't really do that.
The only one that I really liked for them was that Gregory Rousseau pick because they needed a pass rush.
That dude is huge too.
Yeah,
he's massive.
He's a big boy. So I that's the only one that I really liked, but that was their first round pick. The rest of them were, who was that? I didn't even study him, honestly. Nobody even had him on their draft board. You could have taken him. You could have signed him as an undrafted free agent. All right, that's the AFC East. Let's talk about. We'll go AFC South and we'll finish up with the AFC West because I know you want to talk about the Broncos and for good reason because there's some other stuff outside of it happened on draft day, but there's some other stuff outside of the draft that we should talk about too. The South. This was Kelsey from Hilo Sports who was doing these grades. Jaguars A-, Texans C+, Colts B-, and the Titans a B. I didn't really have. Do you agree with the Jaguars getting an A for this draft?
There's the only reason why the Jaguars deserve an A is because of their number 1 pick, and they couldn't fuck that up. But
They could have.
They could have, but they didn't fuck that up because they're not that stupid.
They still took all 9 minutes on the clock.
They just did that to spite people, for ratings or whatever. But look, why do you pick Travis Etienne? That is so disrespectful to James Robinson. Like, come on, Travis. Look, if you really want to pair Trevor Lawrence with former teammates, go draft a Clemson receiver. There's a few on the board.
Rodgers.
Yeah, go do that. You don't trade up and get a running back after you had the best rookie running back this year, and he was undrafted.
Didn't play the last 4 games of the season too.
Like, come on, James Robinson, man, that is so disrespectful to him. That is terrible. Etienne, I was big on. I think Etienne could be the best running back in this draft, but he's going to wash away down there. He is not going to be a starting running back. He's not going to go in and win the job. That's James Robinson's job right now.
They're probably going to put him in the starting position, unfortunately.
Then we're in a situation where James Robinson is still in his prime.
Yeah.
Someone else is going to be very
James
happy.
Robinson's going to be on another team. I think that pick solidified James Robinson won't get a second contract with Jacksonville.
I don't understand.
Unless Etienne really does flame out and
then you waste a first round pick on a guy who's flaming out.
You're hoping if you like James Robinson, you're hoping for your first round pick to be a bust, which is not something successful franchises do all that often. You're expecting your first round pick to come in and make an impact, and I don't know if Etienne's going to be able to do that. And if he does, you're missing out on a great playmaker he was with your team when you were the worst in the NFL, and now
he made your team watchable. Let's put it that way. Jaguars were not fun to watch.
No.
And the only times they were worth anything was fantasy owners when they had James Robinson in the playoffs.
And let's be honest, they sat him out of those last 4 games to ensure that they had the number 1 overall pick. If James Robinson plays in one of those last few games, there's a possibility they win more games than the Jets. And we're talking about Trevor Lawrence in Manhattan like a lot of people wanted instead of Trevor Lawrence being in Jacksonville. But Houston is one that I wanted to talk about because they got Davis Mills, which is a guy that I said was a hidden gem in this draft.
Yeah, you guys are too nice. Like, you guys didn't give any Fs out. That's an F. They had an F draft.
They were probably, but they don't have any draft picks. So with what they did, with what they had, I'll be okay with a C+. But
way too generous. They at least had a D, not a C+.
Well,
like, at least a D. Look,
there was a D given, but it wasn't in the AFC.
Their first pick was a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
That tells you all you need to know about where this organization is. Because they don't know what the allegations or what's going to happen with Deshaun Watson. You probably should have took some of those deals 2 months back, 3 months back, then especially the Broncos that were offering you should have took those deals because Deshaun Watson may be on the curb at the end of the season. He may not be playing football. Mm-hmm. And you take Davis Mills, who is a good quarterback, don't get me wrong, but they didn't do anything. They got a bunch of scrubs.
Yeah.
Like, no offense to anyone that got drafted by Houston, the only reason why I'm going to be watching Houston football is because of number 30, Philip Lindsay. That's the only reason why I will tune into any football game that Houston Texans play. Besides that, Texans are going to be drafting number 1 overall next year. Book it. Yeah. Book it. They will be drafting number 1 overall next year. If it's not them, it'll be some of these lower teams that maybe, I don't know.
I see them or maybe the Falcons.
Falcons, yeah. They're going to be a number 1 pick overall next year. Book it now. But Texans, Davis Mills is a good quarterback, but you should have done something else. You should have tried to trade up for at least a second-round pick because they didn't have a second-round pick either. No. The first pick was in the 3rd round. Try to trade up to the 2nd round. Waste some picks. You're telling yourself, we're just going to sit here at 3rd round and not do anything. You at least should have tried to bunch some of those up so you could at least get one valuable starter.
Yeah.
They didn't get one viable starter, I think. Well, Davis Mills would probably start. That's the only reason because of the Deshaun Watson thing. But they didn't get one guy who should be a starter in the NFL.
No, they have so many holes to fill, and they really didn't. They drafted guys at the positions that they needed to, but they're not guys that. There's a difference.
They looked at